Hi, it's Gwyn and welcome back to the Revolver Beatles channel. You might have your own thoughts on what might be the worst Beatle album release ever. But for me, there's just one candidate: the Beatles' Real Music. Released on March the 22nd, 1982, this album was instigated by Capitol Records in the US. Following the theatrical re-release of each of the Beatles movies in 1981 and in 1982, the US label decided to compile an album of songs featured in the films and capitalise on the revival of interest in the Fab Four. I remember buying this album at the time and being spectacularly unimpressed with this album. I cannot remember the last time I played this before preparing for this video, but we are probably talking decades. Don't get me wrong, the songs contained on this album are all top quality Beatles tunes. I love them all. But following rock and roll, love songs and ballads, I guess movie songs were just an inevitable continuation for EMI, Capitol and Parlophone to mine the rich seam of the Beatles' back catalogue. The track listing is as follows: A Hard Day's Night, I Should Have Known Better, Can't Buy Me Love, And I Love Her, Help, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, Ticket to Ride, Magical Mystery Tour, I Am the Walrus, Yellow Submarine, All You Need Is Love, Let It Be, Get Back, and The Long and Winding Road. That makes representation from each of the Beatle movies as follows: A Hard Day's Night, 4 songs, Help, 3 songs, Magical Mystery Tour, just 2 songs, Yellow Submarine, 2 songs, and Let It Be, 3 songs. The track listing itself illustrates just how poorly served this album is by only a 14-song allocation, and as such, the concept is doomed to fail. But why only 14 tracks? The Beatles' ballads had 20. Additionally, the fact that many of these songs had already appeared in other compilations over recent years left dedicated fans at the time feeling as though they were being squeezed. Little did they know how we would all feel in 2025, but there you go. If you were based in the US, there were some benefits, however, of buying this compilation. It was the first US Beatles album to use the original British stereo mixes of many of the songs. Previously, US albums had used different mixes or fake stereo versions of the songs. It included the first US release of the stereo mix of I Am the Walrus. This had only previously been available in the UK. The Magical Mystery Tour LP had a US-only fake stereo version before that. Fan reaction to the LP was pretty mixed, with many complaining about the omission of songs such as If I Fell, The Night Before, I Need You, The Fool on the Hill, and Two of Us, to name just a few. Now let's talk about the artwork. The Beatles' amazing legacy of era-defining album artwork design had been sullied by a spate of recent compilation LPs issued by EMI. But surely the worst of these until this point was the Real Music album. The front and back covers fielded a wrapped cover illustration by artist David McCracken, featuring the Beatles in various movie guises entering a Capitol-themed movie theatre. Surely images from the movies themselves could have better served a design concept rather than this rather uninspiring, childlike cartoon representation of the Beatles. It's hardly surprising that this release was not officially sanctioned by the remaining Beatles themselves. Frankly, it looks a mess. The album's inner sleeve featured film strip style artwork and various still photographs, which, as you can see, only very few of them feature from movies themselves. I think there's one here of John from Help, a few from Let It Be, but other than that, not from the movies at all. And on the other side, how uninspiring can you possibly get than that? Now, other territories did have slight variations to this artwork, but none of them were of any real significance. In some editions, the album came with a souvenir booklet with colour photos and trivia, but in no way do these elevate the quality of this product. With A Hard Day's Night and Help available on VHS tape early in the 1980s, a new generation of fans were getting a taste of the Beatles movies. And with John Lennon still attracting a large element of sympathetic nostalgia vibes, Capitol could have better served Beatles fans and the wider public with a much more high quality product. As it was, the more consistent and superior sound quality versions on this album, rather than the fake stereo and dexterized reverb versions that US fans were used to on some of the earlier tunes, was still not enough to generate a successful LP chart-wise. In the US, Capitol Records released a limited number of promotional copies on a translucent gold vinyl. These were individually numbered and are now considered quite collectible by Beatles fans. Chart-wise, in the US, the LP reached number 19, and in the UK, it reached the dizzy heights of number 56, a noticeable come down in comparison to other compilation LPs that had been released over previous years. Over time, Real Music has become more of a collector's item than a go-to Beatles release. It wasn't released on CD, and it hasn't been reissued on streaming platforms. This, in addition to the other post-split LPs, other than the Red and the Blue albums, will be consigned to a vinyl-only footnote in their discography, never likely to be seeing the light of day, and, quite honestly, thankfully so. Another factor in this monstrosity that was Real Music was its promotional sidekick, a single that divides opinion to this day, the Beatles movie medley. Piggybacking on the success of Dutch pop interpreters Stars on 45, who had achieved pretty reasonable success with song medleys containing several Beatles songs with sound-alike vocals. So Capitol decided to replicate this formula by combining songs, and this was now going to be utilised to promote Real Music. The medley itself was a 3-minute mashup of the following 7 songs, edited together with hard cuts and no real transitions. Magical Mystery Tour, All You Need Is Love, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, I Should Have Known Better, A Hard Day's Night, Ticket to Ride, and Get Back. Commercially, however, it did actually achieve some level of success. The Beatles movie medley cracked the top 20 in the US, hitting number 12 on the Billboard charts, and in the UK it hit number 10, the first Beatles single in the British top 10 since 1976. Artistically and critically it was a mixed bag, however. Many fans and critics hated it, feeling it cheapened the Beatles' legacy, as it surely did. Even EMI, in the UK that is, initially refused to release it, calling it a tacky exploitation, but they eventually caved in to public demand. The B-side to the medley single was a bit weird too. Originally, Capitol had wanted to use something called Fab 4 on Film, an interview montage about the movies, but EMI put their foot down and denied it. So the B-side ended up being I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. This felt a bit random to many Beatles fans who thought it was really just a token gesture to get a George featured song onto the packaging as a whole, considering he had been left out entirely off the album. The medley stands as some kind of Frankenstein relic of the 1980s, to be honest, a time when the Beatles' estates had no control over the releases from their back catalogue, and artistic quality control succumbed to the corporate opportunism of the record labels themselves. Either together or individually, I cannot see that many fans can look back with a nostalgic, misty-eyed endearment towards either Real Music or the movie medley single. But maybe, just maybe, you do. And if so, then please leave your defence of these releases in the comments below. If you think that there's another album worthy of the title Beatles' Worst Album, then also I'd love to hear from you. Perhaps we can feature them in a future video too. Let me just take this opportunity to ask you to consider giving the video a thumbs up. And if you want to keep up to date with all of the Beatles content coming your way, then please hit that subscribe button. It's free. But that's just about all for now for this episode. I'll be back very soon with some more Beatles content. But until then, it's bye for now.